Today we're gathering around the campfire with Jill, a QHS member whose life is as exciting and grounding as a hike through the mountains. But what trails did she tread to reach these heights? Let's trek into the wilderness and discover the adventures that led Jill to where she is today.
Hi, I'm Jill, and I just want to share my prequel with those of you in QHS and those of you who are thinking about being part of QHS. It's a wonderful place to be. What I really love about it, and I have to put this up front, is that I've been a part of many, many things. I've been a part of some big things and some little things. And what I find is too often we let our egos get in the way. But what's beautiful about the goal of QHS is about pure health. It's about health through frequency, and there's no one competing to be number one because we all want better health and a longer life. And we're in a place where that's going to happen. And so we don't have to compete. There are many people who volunteer out of the kindness of their heart, out of their love for our goal. And that makes it a wonderful place to be. So for me, I found it to be one of my most incredible projects I've ever done. So I'm putting that out in the beginning because that's how I feel. And I know you can too. So with that, I'm just going to say that I was born number 3 of a family of 5 of us. And my parents were together until they passed. And I felt like my childhood was really great. Sure, I had an alcoholic father, but I never doubted he loved me. And all 3 of us kids will say we never doubted that our parents loved us. So that makes life really special. We learned about family love. And if you know how to be in love in a family, you can share friendship love with other children, and it follows you through life. And then if you're lucky enough, then you get to share in a romantic love relationship. And so I feel like I was blessed that my grandfather on my dad's side, that he raised his children, including my dad and his twin brother, when their mother passed when they were 7. And so they knew how to love. And he would not split his twins. There were those that wanted to take them in the family. And he said, no, I'll raise my children. And he baked them bread, and he was a great, great dad and a wonderful grandpa. And he came to live in Wyoming for a while. We enjoyed him. And then he came back when I was adult. And he told me, hey, I got all my personal possessions. Don't tell anyone, but I'm coming to live. And I was so excited, right? So excited. So I have a wonderful, loving family on my mother's side, very same. With them, they owned a huge block of land in Illinois. They both came from Illinois and moved to Wyoming on their honeymoon. And I was grateful they did. And so my mother's side, they were, she had grandparents on both sides of the family that lived at their place. And my mother's mom took care of both her dad and my grandpa's dad, and even worked at a shoe factory. It was amazing, the caring and apricot, just wonderful trees. They had an orchard, and so we loved going there in the summer times. So I was really blessed. Now, through all this, I was born a child with asthma. I had infantile asthma, and it did hold me back, and I had asthma attacks through school. By the time I was around 20, it faded away. But I will say that I was exercising, taking Primatene so that I could still work out, like planning for my wedding and dragging my mom and my aunt along. So, we did what we went through. I also have a curved spine, and I've lived with it forever. I knew my family. My dad was a mechanic, and we had our own auto shop, and we didn't have insurance. So I heard about it through the doctor and that as a girl, but I didn't know what it was, and I lived with it, and I was a dancer, and I was a cheerleader, and I was in plays, and I did everything with this curved spine. It wasn't until I was in my 50s that I went to a chiropractor when I was out visiting a friend of mine in Virginia when I got slammed by a revolving door. She was caught in it, and she was older, and I wanted to get her out. I saw that I could get out. Well, little did I know that I was going to trip that thing to go forward. It pushed me, spit me out on the marble floor, and I was injured. And I wasn't going to go to just any doctor, so I went to a chiropractor, and he said to my friend, he said, may I show Jill your x-rays? She's like, sure. So he showed me hers and her spine, and he showed me mine And I was like, okay. And he goes, this is one of the most extreme cases I've seen. If I were to go out on the streets and claim I was your brother, there wouldn't be a single surgeon that wouldn't do a surgery. He says, you have no pain. I said, no, I've told you I have no pain. So I don't really have pain, but it'll nag at me every now and then if I overdo. So that's stuff that I've lived with. And I just bring that up that, the power of the mind is extremely powerful, and you will find out how to use it at QHS. If you've never really thought about what consciousness can do, you're going to learn it, and it's phenomenal. So let's just kind of fast forward, bounce around a little bit here, and I'm going to say that I've shared what my childhood was like. And my families were here before Ellis Island. So we were here a long time. And I'm proud of my dad's heritage because they created they created their township in Illinois. They built the first building there, them and a few other families that they knew. When they came out, they came up the Mississippi River and they settled. They didn't take the track across the country because it was more dangerous. Very brilliant-minded people. And they started that. They started the town hall. The town hall could be used for the school, for the church, for whatever. And then they built that up. So to me, that's how America was built. And that's how America can still be built. That's how countries get built. That's how communities get built, like QHS. With a common goal, you can do anything. So I've been that type of girl that I've just been a go-getter forever. I had a lisp. That was another thing that I have that I kind of forget that it's there. But I had a lisp and I couldn't speak when I was little without sounding funny with the word ice cream and things like that. But I got speech classes. My first speech classes were in second grade when a teacher got me behind some headsets and I got to listen to tones in my ears. And in no time at all, I had no lisp. And after that, I didn't have to be shy, freckle-faced redhead with a lisp anymore that people thought was cute, and I just didn't like it. So then I was able to do a book report in second grade. I was a book reader. I liked to read when I was little with my big sister. And so by second grade, I was a bookworm, and it was President's Week. And I was sitting in my classroom with the snow, as it is in Wyoming, with the wind blowing horizontal. There were Cupid's busts and President's bust up on the wall. And as I looked at them and I looked out the window and I was daydreaming, I had read several biographies of the presidents to get my bookworm reports in. And I thought, I'm going to be a president. Now, I was already a little girl in business because my dad had service stations and a shop. And I knew that when he worked on a foreign car, parts were more money. Well, we talked about life in general, and I even knew what a tariff was. I knew all kinds of things from that family, and I thought the president could fix anything. By then, JFK had passed, sadly, and now this is way before women's lib, way before, and we've never seen a female president. And that's okay because I don't have to separate myself by gender because I can love them all. Now, I'll tell you this. In 2012, I ran for president because I had the platform to run, and it was to remove the force on the people through an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I came in 17th out of all the candidates. Now, did I think I'd win? I didn't think hard enough that I would. I should have thought harder. But I enjoyed it. I met people all across this country, wonderful people that it didn't matter their class, it didn't matter their color. What mattered was they cared about having force removed from them. And I know that we are closer and closer, and that with things like QHS, where people feel safe, they feel protected, they feel that their health is going to be better, they will have a better drive to have a better life. And to me, that's what's important for everyone, is to be happy. So I did that. It was just one thing I did with life. But, I'm grateful that I found QHS, or QHS found me, because I had a guy he was my tax guy, my sales tax guy in Wyoming. And I got to know him because I had started after I had a 30-year career in the oil business, went through a divorce, had farmed, ranched by then, the divorce was it was hard. We had a ranch and it was a lot of work. And in that time period, I had two wonderful boys. I wanted two boys, 2 years apart. And so on our 5th anniversary, we had a 5-minute test, and I knew it was going to be a boy, and we had 2 boys, but we worked really hard as a family, and they've grown through that, and they're both businessmen of their own, doing what they love to do. So it makes me proud of them to carry that on. But what I really think is important is that QHS offers people a chance to step into who you are, because we don't have, like I said, egos involved. We want the best for everyone. And I know that because Dale wanted his life to be healthier, when I used to go see him and I offered him a solution to his problem, a holistic solution, that when he got his little 3D printed black device, he pulled it out of his pocket and he said, "Look at this." And I was like, "What in the world?" And he told me about it. Well, nobody was being accepted. And then finally, it was quite a while later, 6 months, whatever, and it was 1 day before the end of the exception period at that time. And I was like, "No, dude, I'm on. Would you give me the link? Come on, let's get this done." And I thank Dale P for that, because if he wouldn't have told me, I couldn't have told my friends. And I'm going to tell more and more people, because even in the last 3 days, I've had people that I let know about it get back to me because they want to join. They had the money to join. One, I just happened to get a bump from him, and he said, "Do you remember that thing?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's still out there." And he's going through a hurdle. So he's like, "Great, I saw a payment plan. This is wonderful." And then another one that I called yesterday to see how she'd been. She says, "I'm all in. I can't wait." I told her about all of our wonderful values. Coach Tracy, how can we not learn from her? Everyone that's part. Dr. Alfredo is phenomenal. He's a genius mind, and you can steal their technology, you can steal their works, but you can't take that out of their mind. And he's the perfect proof that there were those that knew what they were up to, and he continues to improve. I'm so great. Cynthia, I'm so grateful. Cynthia has been a wonderful leader. She's a strong leader, and she was present in things that most of us would have loved to have been part of. I've been a searcher. I've always been a searcher, but somehow I feel like I'm home with QHS, and I welcome anyone to come join us.
Join us on the Prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.